I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, August 13th, 2013 board meeting for the Santa Barbara Unified School District. And we will begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We also have headsets for the hearing impaired. Those are available as well. And we will begin our meeting with introductions, proclamations, presentations, and the superintendent's report.
Well, thank you very much, President Lamone. Welcome back, everybody. We're gearing up for the start of the school year. There will be a number of new faces on our campuses, 4 assistant principals, 1 child development preschool coordinator who is here tonight, Michelle Robertson. I'd like to introduce her and welcome her to our district. 1 community resource coordinator, Dr. Patricia Madrigal. I would like to welcome her to our district as well. 67, as I said, new certificated staff. That includes special education teachers, elementary teachers, secondary teachers, speech and language pathologists, and school psychologists. And one of the great things that I'm doing is interviewing all of our teachers, having them do a lesson. So I've had an opportunity to meet the overwhelming majority of those students. I think it's important to kind of share with you where our enrollment is. And I'm going to give you a bunch of numbers, but I'll give you the big numbers to start with. At the end of the 2012-13 school year, our enrollment was 15,317, and currently enrolled in Aries, we have 15,461 students. So an increase as of right now of about 140 students. La Colina Junior High School's enrollment is about 6 students more at 847 this year. La Cumbre Junior High School's is 2 students more at 531. San Marcos High School is over 100 students more, about 150 students more at 1,972. Santa Barbara High School is about 70 students more at 2,202. Santa Barbara Junior High School is about 10 students more at 868. Goleta Valley Junior High School is about 40 students less at 837. Dos Pueblos High School is about 20 students less at 2,165. Santa Barbara Charter Middle School is at 44 students. La Cuesta Continuation High School has 154 students as compared to 121. Alta Vista Alternative High School has 108 students as compared to 116. Adams Elementary has 594 students, an increase of about 40 students from last year. Cleveland Elementary has 403 students, a decrease of about 15 from last year. Franklin Elementary is up to 576, which is an increase of about 40 students from last year. OAS has 141 students, which is an increase of about 7 students this past year. Santa Barbara Community Academy has 286 students, which is an increase of a couple of students from last year. McKinley has 426 students, which is a decrease of about 20 students from last year. Monroe Elementary has 448 students, which is a decrease of about 50 students from last year. Peabody Charter has 741 students, which is a decrease of about 10 students from last year. Roosevelt has 620 students, which is an increase of about 50 students from last year. Washington Elementary has 612, which is a decrease of about 20 students from last year. Adelante Charter has 251 students, which is an increase of about 25 students from last year. And finally, Santa Barbara Charter Elementary has 214 students, which is a decrease of about 25 students from last year. So overall, as of we sit right now, our enrollment is about 150 students higher than this time last year. So it's always, as we like to say, we like to see the whites of the eyes of the students, so when they come, so we'll know what our true enrollment is. And at our next board meeting, I'll give you our numbers as of the first day of school, and throughout the month of September, I'll continue updating the board and the community on our enrollment. I did want to say also on August 20th, we have our Professional Learning Day for all teachers, and it's packed with 39 different exciting 50-minute modules on topics such as teaching critical thinking for the Common Core, behavior support procedures for students with IEPs and 504s, everything you need to know about pupil fees, deposits, and other charges, unlocking the mystery of assistive technologies for students with disabilities, and my favorite session is Grill the Superintendent. So there'll be 2 of those. I'm looking forward to my grilling. Hopefully everyone's seen the recent media coverage on Measures Q and R, the bond-funded construction work. And the renovation and construction work on our campuses has been very impressive, and most of the work scheduled for the summer will be finished by the time students arrive on August 26th. And we're looking forward to a ribbon cutting in the days ahead when the Santa Barbara High School celebrates completion of the long-awaited gym renovation project. That should be fun. You can see photographs that Barbara Chiani has taken of the construction projects in the photos that are posted on our new website. We've already had back-to-school night at Cleveland Elementary. It was on August 8th. We had 11 student interpreters that helped facilitate communication with monolingual English-speaking teachers and monolingual Spanish-speaking parents, and they all wore these great T-shirts. And these are the T-shirts that we're providing all of our back-to-school night interpreters so that they're easily identifiable. And we look forward to the work that they'll be doing at all of our elementary school campuses. And a reminder that, excuse me, those are students who are in our high schools that are out helping facilitate communication between our schools and our parents, which is extraordinarily important. Want to give a shout out to some adults: Linda Guarena at Dos Pueblos High School, Maria Jimenez at Santa Barbara High School, Teresa Lewis at San Marcos, and Celeste at La Cuesta, who have done a tremendous job as our contacts at those 4 schools in facilitating what we think is really a great project. And with that, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Board, any comments or correspondence? Mr. Herron?
I'll just make one. I attended a ICANN music festival at Franklin. It was 3 orchestras coming together under the ICANN program. The Yola group in Los Angeles and the Heart of one was up north, but this says both Heart of Los Angeles, but one was from up north. And it was a great day, great morning, and just a lot of activity, and 3 orchestras that meshed together, each joining with the others. And they spent the morning in actual lessons, learning from mentors. And so it was a very exciting time for the kids, and the session in the afternoon when they did their performance was fantastic, and the food was fantastic. So it was a great day at Franklin.
Thank you. All right. And we will move on to announcement of closed session action items. The board moved to deny the appeal of case 2013/14-3 for the inter-district transfer to Santa Barbara Unified. The motion was made by Ms. Parker and was seconded by Mr. Herron, and it passed 4-0 with 1 absent. That is our only closed session action item that's reportable. We will move on to public comment.
And we do have public comment, Mr. Kenneth Locke. Mr. Locke, you'll have 3 minutes, and I'll try to give you a warning in 30 seconds.
My name is Kenneth Locke. I spoke before the City Council did a public comment. I was talking about the connection between tennis and mind-body medicine. I have a page on my site. If you Google tennis medicine, mind-body medicine, it should come up on Google. I've had it up for a little while, but I'm working with it, and it turns out that mind-body medicine doesn't have a reference to an athlete in relation to them being a model for that practice. And it's just kind of funny. I mean, just imagine a practice, a medical practice, and it doesn't have a model, a standard, to differentiate the basis of being healthy versus not healthy. And on this page, I kind of get into the idea that if there is not, say, a model or a reference to somebody who is, say, mentally and physically healthy, an athlete, through an athletic discipline, well, it'll turn out that the illness, say an illness, will go undetected. And what is required is that there is one individual who is, say, who has been healed, who is aware of the nature of the illness, which represents itself as being both mentally and physically impaired, say, and that's where I come in. I'm claiming to be actually the first athlete through the athletic discipline of tennis who is now aware of how tennis represents itself as a mind-body exercise, how the mind and body are integrated, and I'm using an example of Harvard's got a institute head up by Herbert Benson, mind-body medicine, and I'm using them as an example of, and just trying to get people to understand that, again, they don't have a model for an athlete. And just imagine at Harvard. And then I'm using an example of like Roger Federer. Everybody, idolizes him, say, but I'm sorry to say that he's not the ideal when it comes to a person who is mentally and physically healthy. And then the mind-body integration, it's actually based on having complete and integrated knowledge in relation to the complete and integrated composition of the exercise. And I know that, and actually it brings us into the understanding of how tennis is holistically healthy, because my practice now is a holistic health practice where I'm actually developing a holistic oneness with both of my arms. So I'm actually being the 30 seconds. Being the genius, self-proclaimed genius of tennis, I kind of have the goods when it comes to all this. And pretty much I have a responsibility as well as everybody has a responsibility. I'm just following through with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes public comment. We will move on to our consent agenda.
And Madam President, we have a couple of revisions on the consent agenda. First, on E3, the agreements between the Family Service Agency, we need to eliminate Cleveland Elementary School from that. And then on E14, we have a revised personnel action list.
And I also wanted to clarify their...
It's on the action agenda.
On action, okay. So then I will leave that as is. All right. Board, any items that you would like to pull? Dr. Buss?
E14.
E14, we will pull the approval of the Human Resources Action List, the personnel list. Anything else?
I'd like to just make a comment. I noticed that the acceptance of donations is part of the consent calendar. I'd like to make sure it's of record that we accept those with gratitude.
Thank you, Mr. Herron. And what Dr. Cash and I will remember next time to pull them. I think we typically pull it separately, but thank you for that reminder.
I'll move to approve the remainder of the consent agenda as revised.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 4-0, 1 absent. All right, so then we will take the item E14, which is the personnel list. We're going to take it in 2 parts tonight. So the first part we will take with...
So we'll all do like 3 parts.
So 3 parts. So we'll...
Yeah.
3 parts.
3 parts to tonight's vote. And the first, I will go ahead and pull, I will be abstaining from the name. Last name is Williford, first name is Lisette.
I'll move to approve. Well, actually, I think that we also need to go ahead and pull
Yes, we have to
yours.
pull.
Yeah.
So if you want to pull yours so that the three of us can,
Vote on the, oh, wait.
all of us can vote
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
remainder.
pull yours and we'll-
And then we'll,
Yeah. And then we
Then we'll
can vote on the-
stagger.
on the whole thing, and we'll
Exactly.
come back
Yeah.
together. Okay.
okay,
So I'm pulling the last name Boss, P-A-Z.
okay. So I'll move to approve the revised personnel action form without those two names.
Second?
Great, okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion passes 4-0.
Then I will move to approve the appointment of Whitney Paz as a .6 teacher at La Colina.
Second?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Abstain.
Noes and one abstention, so the motion passes 3-0 with one abstention. Williford.
Yes, no, but I'm still thinking that through because there's one absent and one abstention, so I just want to be clear that there was no
Sorry,
no.
thank you. 3-0 with one abstention and one absent.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
And I'll move to approve the appointment of Lisette Williford as a 1.0 teacher at Santa Barbara High School.
Second?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 I'm abstaining. The motion passes 3-0, 3 ayes, 1 abstention, and 1 absent. And that is the personnel list for tonight. All right, so we are moving forward to the action agenda item. And first up, we have, I do want to clarify that the online version of our action agenda item is correct. And so so I know there's some hard copies that do not include item F3 as the resolution for Santa Barbara City College and Santa Barbara Unified's concurrent enrollment. So I want to be clear that the online version is correct, and that's what we will be using.
Right. Legal counsel confirmed.
Thank you. All right, so first up is second reading and adoption of Administrative Regulation 5125.1, release of directory information. And I believe that is Dr. Cash, Mr. Sumter.
Mr. Turina?
Mr. Turina.
This item was before you at our last board meeting, and it's returned for action.
All right.
Okay, so this is the second reading of this. I'm not really sure where I'm supposed to go with it, that we're adding the photograph and the grade level. I think I'd just entertain any questions about this revision.
Board, questions or comments?
I'll just make a comment, and you're new, so you get a week off, but I'd like to see the same one that was before us in the first reading, so we know exactly what the changes are on this reading. Because even though I think it's all the same, I had to read both of them again to find out exactly what we changed. So,
Okay, so for clarification, it's items 12 and 13.
yeah. And without knowing that, having to go back to the other one and compare the two. So I'd like the one on the second reading in general to be the same as the first reading, so we can see what, we don't have to go hunting for the changes.
Okay,
Thank you. But good job.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions, Board? All right.
I'll move to adopt AR 5125.1, release of directory information.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Next, we have the second reading and adoption of Board Policy and Administrative Regulation 1113, District and School Websites. Mr. Turina. Board, any questions or comments?
Just a comment, because the result of what I had to do to compare the two, I happened to notice another section of this, and that is just not being followed through with at the schools, whether or not it's correct or not correct to what schools are doing. But this one makes it clear that you can't have links to vendors or supporters or non-academic, and yet we have many schools on their websites that have linked to their supporters. So I think that needs to be looked at, not on this item, because that wasn't the purpose of this, but I think overall, we need to see if wording might need to be changed on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, your email will force us to, not force us, but allow us to have a conversation, which is on my list of items to converse with principals tomorrow,
Thank you.
or actually Thursday.
Yeah, and again, I'm not for one way or the other.
Right. No, I think that we need to be consistent.
And with today's technology and e-commerce, it needs to be looked at.
Correct. Absolutely.
Any additional comments or questions? All right, hearing none, I will take a motion if there is one.
I move to approve Board Policy 1113.
Second?
May I assume that includes the AR?
As well.
All right. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. All right, and now we are moving to approval of resolution number 2013/2014-12 regarding concurrent enrollment.
Thank you very much, President Lamone. This is before you as another way of us solidifying our relationship with Santa Barbara City College and our opportunities for our students to earn dual enrollment credit or concurrent enrollment credit while at the same time, at Santa Barbara City College, but at the same time earning credit towards their high school diploma. We haven't had a resolution in the past. This has simply been part of an MOU we've had. But based upon conversation with our legal counsel and Santa Barbara City College President Lori Gaskin and the Chancellor's Office for the community college system, it's being recommended that districts now pass a resolution that recognizes that.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Cash. Board, any questions or comments? Ms. Parker?
Well, just a comment, because I hadn't really, 'cause the concurrent enrollment piece is really about City College students being able to take the classes physically on the high school campus. And I hadn't realized that happened until last year when I was hearing about somebody's son who was essentially a sophomore taking a City College class at San Marcos with a bunch of San Marcos juniors and seniors. I think it's great for the community for this to be a two-way street. So I'm pleased that it's on the agenda.
Any additional comments or questions? All right.
I'll move approval, of concurrent resolution 2013-2014-12 regarding current enrollment.
Second?
Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. We will move on to approval of revised Santa Barbara County Local Schools Attendance Review Board bylaws.
Going to ask Mitch to come on up.
All right, so in discussion with David Chen and Corina Trevino in regards to our SARB that was very successful last year, we had talked about reducing the number on the board by, I think, 3. And the suggestion was the county superintendent, since they no longer have a program which looks at expelled students, and they won't take referrals for students from that board. Also, the Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention Commissioner's representation on the board, from my sources, did not seem to be useful for what the board was presenting as far as the truancy program. And then there was the county health department that was actually getting interventions prior to the SARB. So they were getting interventions at the TMT, was the truancy mediation team, and also the after-school meetings with the assistant principals at the school sites. So they were getting interventions earlier than the SARB, which was what led to a lot of the success in the SARB process.
Great, great. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Mr. Herron?
I think in correspondence, we were going to eliminate the student up
Yes,
there.
we were.
Because it's not the intent to have a
student on
student
the board.
participating in the process.
That's correct. Me and Mr. Chen from the DA's office, we went back and forth on that, and I just realized that was on the board, and they don't need to be represented by a student there.
Yeah. Well, the students themselves aren't going to be on the board, that's for sure.
Or student representation for the board.
Yeah.
All right.
I will move to approve the revised Santa Barbara County Local School Attendance Review Board bylaws.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Buss. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Trevino. Next, we have board member assignments for Adelante Charter School Liaison, Parent Advisory Committee, District Gate Advisory Committee, and the Santa Barbara Education Foundation.
Well, with the start of a new school year, I felt appropriate to have the board engage in a conversation regarding who wants to represent the board or be a board representative for the District Gate Advisory Committee and the Parent Advisory Committee. And then subsequent to that, there's been discussions about possible change in board representation for the Ed Foundation and the charter school. So the matter is before you for discussion and action.
Great, thank you. Dr. Cash? Board, are there committees that you would like to, we'll start there, you'd like to be on?
I resigned from the Education Foundation, so I'm available for others, and I guess if I had my preference, I would like Adelante.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Herron. Ms. Parker?
Just that I had said that I would step up and do the Santa Barbara Education Foundation, and since I'd been on Adelante, it would be great essentially for Mr. Herron and I to swap. But I have a question on two things. One on the Parent Advisory Committee and the District Gate Advisory Committee. Parent Advisory Committee there, in both of those cases, we actually haven't had an assigned board member. We've had traditional board members that go to the Parent Advisory Committee. Now, the District Gate Advisory Committee, I did attend some of their meetings last year. They were quite startled to see me. And I guess that's my question for staff, is that they traditionally have never had a board member present. I think it's great for a board member to be there, but I don't know if there's been any discussions with the executive committee of that board about it.
There hasn't been, but from what I've heard from some of the executive committee, they welcome board members being on there. That was my impression.
And I know that I actually mentioned this to the superintendent because I didn't know, I think we've informally had board members attend, and so I thought, well, why don't we formalize this and actually make it one of our committees, if appropriate. And so it sounds like it is appropriate, and it didn't come to us in December, so it made sense to bring it back. So, yes.
This point, there's a District Advisory Committee for GATE, but is there also a secondary and a elementary GATE advisory group? Because I've attended meetings of both of those. Is this different than those two?
No, it's not. So there are two different groups. It's the same organization, but elementary normally meets to discuss elementary issues, and secondary meets to discuss secondary issues. At some points, they do meet and talk. Starting this year, the two executive directors of those programs will be in the same office.
So if you commit to doing that, you might commit to going to 2 meetings.
Okay, because they've always, the last 2 or 3 months or 2 or 3 sessions, they've been simultaneous meetings at different locations.
Yeah.
We're working on trying to create coherence and collaboration throughout our district.
Okay.
And there's a couple ways we can approach this. We can assign one board member to the elementary, one board member to the secondary, and then when there are joint meetings, we don't break Brown Act because there's 2. Or we could just assign 2 board members and they can decide to flip between the both of them. Ms. Parker, then Dr. Buss.
I think another important thing to keep in mind is that the Parent Advisory Committee meets on Friday mornings. And the DAC typically, either the elementary gate group or the DAC meets at about 3 or 3:30.
3 o'clock,
And
yes.
so if for those of us that are working full-time, it may be better for those of us that have
impact what we
some
will-
flexibility with their schedule. So I traditionally have tried to keep my Fridays free so that I could go, and I'm happy to continue to do that with the Parent Advisory Committee, but this may need to have Ms. Idelson as part of the play.
Ms. Idelson has emailed me about this particular item, and her first choice would be the Parent Advisory Committee, and her second choice would be to serve on the District Gate Advisory Committee. Dr. Buss?
I would be happy to serve on the District Gate Advisory Committee, and I do like your suggestion about splitting it in two, because
Into
then
two,
it provides
why
it
not?
a
Okay.
little more flexibility for the other person as well.
Great. Okay, did you have a preference, elementary or secondary?
Elementary.
All right. And Mr. Herron, are you good with Adelante?
Yes.
All right.
And I would be happy to continue with the GATE DAC, although I probably also will attend the Parent Advisory Committee meetings, but just as Ms. Idelson's backup.
And so you want the
The
secondary?
secondary.
What do you get, Monique?
She's like, I've got a full-time job.
Yeah.
She's starting an education.
Right, I know. I can be a backup to the GATE advisory or the parent advisory. I mean, I could just be a backup. That's fine for actually any of the meetings as a backup. So I'd be fine with that. All right, so just to clarify, I have Adelante Charter School, I have Mr. Herron, I have Gail Idelson as the Parent Advisory Committee, and I have for the District Gate Advisory Committee for elementary, I have Dr. Bass. For secondary, I have Ms. Parker, and then I have the Santa Barbara Education Foundation, Ms. Parker, and I will serve as a backup to any of those committees. All right.
I will so move.
Great.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 4-0. Great. Now we are moving on to board action on petitions for readmissions of expelled students.
Actually, we're on to, you're right.
Oh, okay.
Well, the
No,
online agenda.
Online says approval of declaration.
Yes.
It's in a different order than this piece of paper that we have spit out.
So it
in
would
front of us.
be-
Let's go with the online. just to
Yes,
be
it'd be the approval of the
consistent.
declaration of need for fully qualified educators.
Got it. Okay. So we are on to that item. All right.
Dr. Christensen is here to answer any questions and make the presentation.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Cash, and members of the board. Annually, the California Department of Education requires districts anticipating employing certificated personnel who are not fully credentialed to declare the need for fully qualified educators. Consequently, we are requesting that the board approve resolution number 2013-2014-07. This is something we do every year at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Christensen. Dr. Buss?
Over the last couple of years, how many teachers have fallen within this category, typically?
That's a good question. I'll have to get back with you.
Okay.
I'd say a handful.
Ms. Parker?
So I was trying to, well, it's kind of impossible to cross-reference, but I don't know, anybody that's on this list already has the correct credential for their job?
Yes, they do.
Okay, so
Yes.
everybody on this list is fully credentialed for their position.
Unless they're like in an internship program, and they're working with the university with support to accomplish their they are fully credentialed. Yes, they're fully credentialed, and they're working on another one.
Okay, so they may be getting a
Yes.
second credential
Yes.
with an internship with the university?
Yes.
So there are a few on this one that aren't, that are working towards their
They're fully
credential for their-
credentialed, but they're working on an additional credential in the position in which they are
They've been
teaching.
hired.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So for this, I would just appreciate it if you could clarify. There's a teacher librarian, but I believe it's somebody that's been working as a teacher librarian that's still finalizing her credential. Is
That's
that
correct. That's correct.
And that's the Dos Pueblos
Yes.
librarian? And then the resource specialists, what schools are they at?
I'm sorry, I don't have that at my
Monroe
fingertips.
and Dos Pueblos.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Cash.
Any additional questions or comments?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and move to approve the declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 13-14 school year and the resolution number 2013-2014/07.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes 4-0. Now we're on to the board action on petitions for readmissions of expelled students.
Okay. In case number 2011/12-23, I move to approve the reentry.
Second?
And in case, go ahead. and
All
take a
those in
vote.
favor say aye.
Aye. In case 2012/13-11, I move to approve the reentry.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Both motions pass 4-0. And that is the conclusion of our action item agenda. And we will move on to the conference agenda items. First, we have discussion of renewal of services agreement from InterQuest Detection Canines for the 2013-2014 school year.
We're very happy to have Marlon Sumter join us on the dais this evening, and he's going to take that item.
All right.
This is renewal of a contract that was in place last year with a slight revision. It's identical other than the physical impact to the district. Last year's service contract was an introductory offer, so to speak, that they gave us. And so this year's contract would include an increase in the cost. I don't see that we had the comparison there, but it's about $1,000 for the year. The service that would be provided is still identical. That'd be 30 full-day visits to the high schools that would be divided into 2 half-day visits so they can go from one school to another in the same day. So a total of 60 actual visits to the school sites. Attached, as attachments here, you have a copy of the contract as well as a comparison of data related to the suspension information, the suspension data for controlled substance violations. And you'll see a graph, it's a 10-year comparison, as well as a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet of the numbers for each of the schools. One piece of clarification on the graph is noted that it's total secondary. It needs to be clarified that it's high school only, not including junior high, of course, because we don't have a contract for them to visit junior high, although they have agreed that they would if we asked them to.
Mr. Herron and Ms. Parker.
A question on that slide. Did we not identify the schools on purpose? Was that left off?
Not on purpose? No.
Because I would thought maybe you didn't want anybody to know what each school was, but...
No.
Is each one of...
I actually thought it was there, to be honest with you.
Is each one of those lines a school?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like
I
to...
apologize for that confusion. I thought it was there. In fact, I think I actually told Dr. Cash it was.
I thought you might have had a good reason, but I'd like to see that, a copy of that with the schools identified.
That would be easy to produce for you, yes. Okay.
Ms. Parker.
Obviously, there's a drop, and there may be some other reasons behind the drop, but I think that probably part of the reason why we've seen the drop is because of the effect of the drug dogs. And so I would be in favor of moving forward with a contract for them for another year and see how that plays out, if it's something that stays consistent, if we continue to see lower numbers as a result, or even maybe lower still. But one question that I have that I feel like should be part of this conversation is Well, two things. One is you talked about the junior highs, and I don't know that we see numbers at the junior highs that would remotely make it worthwhile. But I guess that's a question I have of the junior high administrators. And then the other thing that I think we should talk about is that I know as I talked to high school principals about the dog visits, one of the things that we had specifically set up was that students, we were really clear with students that they could leave their they could take their backpacks with them. And a lot of all of the high school administrators really felt like that meant that they didn't get the full effect of the drug dogs, and really didn't like that we had done that. And I don't know, I know why we did it, and I really feel like we did it just for our own reasons and not necessarily, the larger legal picture. But I would love to have the feedback about the larger legal picture. I don't know where the court cases are on this. And
I can tell you that real quickly.
Yes.
So there's only one court in the nation that has allowed that to be not a violation of the Fourth Amendment unreasonable search. That's the Fifth Circuit in Georgia. And that we've been advised that the Fifth Circuit is not a guiding principle for the Ninth Circuit by our counsel.
So in other words, we should continue on, despite how frustrated the principals get. We should continue on with allowing students.
Yes, and that was reiterated by our counsel for this year's contract, based on the Attorney General's opinion of the process.
Great. Okay, thank you. That helps.
Dr. Buss?
Obviously, I wasn't on the board when this was approved the last go-around, and didn't have much comment, obviously, at that point in time in terms of this item. I just wonder, I see the deterrent in terms of the numbers, just in the sheer numbers. And that's how many people we catch. That's not necessarily a reflection of how many people are using or students are. And anecdotally, I've heard when there is the drug dog, kids are texting, or they're parking outside, or doing anything to avoid possibly being caught in this in the drug dog, doing his job. So I kind of wonder, outside of this, what sort of what our numbers would look like, and it's a little bit related to Ms. Barker's comment about the full effect, because we've, in dealing with some of the issues that we've dealt with in terms of student discipline, have seen some of the issues occur even outside of the school boundaries. And so I definitely wonder how much of this is really a deterrent, or it's not really reflecting all of the true numbers that could be taking place. And I wonder how much we are really truly dealing with the root cause of the issue, and whether this is just simply a stopgap measure when we're really not addressing the full issue, which is drug use in general. And so I'm wondering at this point in time if there's been anything other than these numbers done to look at how our numbers are looking across. I know we do the California Healthy Kids Survey, but it has limits. So is there anything else that's done besides this?
Well, besides being a deterrent, I think that, if we look at the end game, so to speak, of this, students who are caught either under the influence or in possession, and if the dog were instrumental in catching them, it gives great opportunity for us to help provide services and at least offer services that we have available, as well as making connections with the student and the family off campus for any agencies that might be there. In terms of numbers, it would be difficult to say what these would look like if the dogs weren't there last year. So I'm not sure if I understand the complete question you're asking, except that all we have to compare by is numbers before or after the presence of them.
And I guess that's the issue. There isn't anything. So our numbers are in isolation in lots of different ways. And my thought about it is, again, is dealing with the root cause, the root issue. And this is just the measuring stick, and it's a point in time. And it's only looking at the number of incidents that we're aware of, not the number of total incidents, or addressing the full effect of deterring, right? So we're not looking at the whole issue in totality, is what I'm saying. And so I still wonder what our numbers would look like, and I guess the answer is we'll never know. So I can't put this within context and say it's due to that, or I can't say it's not due to other factors. So that's my issue right now with just even looking at these numbers in general, because I don't know.
I would have to say that when it was presented to the board a year ago, it was presented not as a measure to stop completely to stop drug use. It's a measure to prevent drug use and drug possession and being under the influence of drugs on campus. And that we have health classes, we have youth service specialists on campus with drug-free activities, a whole host of other things that our schools are using to provide information to students to help have them hopefully make the correct choices in relationship to that. So, you know, I didn't want the board or anyone in the community to believe that we thought from the staff level that you know, canine detection was our sole or was even a major source in eliminating drug use. It clearly for us was a tool in the kind of our arsenal to try to keep drugs off campus mostly. There's a very strong belief among high school administrators that it's most effective in deterring the use of drugs in students who are not users of drugs on a regular basis. And that we have other work to do that we need to do with kids who are making poor choices.
And I guess my comment to that would be that I'm aware of some of those other the other efforts we're doing and other work that we're doing to do prevention. And I want to make sure that we are clear about that in terms of the communication we have with our community about those efforts and how much we are really involved, because I think there are times where people don't hear that message and just see this as the sort of the most symbolic of our efforts, and I don't think that's the case.
I would agree.
And I just the one thing I look at in terms of the numbers is that even if you look at it just like that, you go, wow, 181 to 139, 220 to 139. Wow, we're doing a great job. We're not. And I think we need to really look at the prevention efforts as a whole and not just simply look at this as the sort of the symbolic thing that we're doing. Wow, we're doing the best thing, and the dogs are doing well, they may or may not be doing their job, is what I'm trying to say too as well.
Thank you, Dr. Buss. Mr. Herron?
I was just going to basically say the same, just reiterate Dr. Cash, is that the intent of this program from day one was not to get at the root causes of drug use. It was purely keeping drugs off the campus. All the others is a whole different set of needs and programs. But the best thing that can happen, and we've said this before, if the dogs find nothing, that's good. You know, we don't want dogs. We never intended this to catch people. That was never the intent. It was to keep them out of the school so the kids in classes can be in an environment that is drug-free, at least in that class, on that campus, at that moment. And this is just a point in time, but it's a good point in time. But the better is if the dogs aren't, we don't have on this chart how many kids got caught with drugs by the dogs. I hope it's a very low number.
It is.
It is, yes.
Do we have those numbers you can share?
Sure. Yeah, I've sent them every time the drug dogs visited. I sent that information to, but we can certainly put it together for each school site in the district as a whole.
And in terms of numbers of I guess I'd call it hits by the dogs, it is very low for the students that were found in possession. They may find or determine there's some residual odor, or they might find something in a bush somewhere or something without a student being attached to it. But we'd have to go to the sites to ask specific numbers of students that were part of these numbers that the drug dog alerted on versus a staff person catching the student.
And that's a good way of putting what I was trying to say as well, is that we have to look at this with the entirety of the context that we're looking at, not just simply within this, because it's attached to the item we're talking about. And I'm I look at it and I'm fearful of saying, well, that's totally attributable to the dogs.
Yeah.
Well, it may or may not be.
No.
Yeah, and we are not sending that message out either. It's clearly a tool in the arsenal.
Ms. Parker?
I guess one question I have for Mr. Sumner is if the high school principals have parsed this data out yet, because you don't have it up by high school, and to make clear to the public, if you look at the 12-13 school year, you'll see that actually the three high schools are equivalent for the 12-13 school year. There's not that much difference in the numbers in terms of suspensions and expulsions for controlled substance violations. But, for example, Santa Barbara High School, the number halved in 1 year. And I don't know if Mr. Becchio has, if he gives that to this program, or if he has other reasons why he thinks that that there was such a dramatic drop.
Well, Dr. Drotti will ask all 4 high school principals that this week.
Dr. Buss?
I'm glad you asked that question, because it's leading to sort of answering my question, which is what other things, and how can we look at this data within that larger context to understand sort of our trends, and where does this particular item fit into that larger picture, I think is really helpful. And especially if you look at trends across the different schools, and talking to each individual site administrator would be great. Thanks.
And I will add that I'm appreciative that we brought this back again. I know that that was a commitment we made a year ago, that we wanted to look at the information, we wanted to look at the data, so I'm very thankful that this has come back. I absolutely agree that we all want safe and drug-free campuses and classrooms. I am still not convinced that this is one of the many tools that we should implement. I think $13,000 for 60 visits is a lot of money, and I'm just not convinced this is the right tool. I do see the trend going down, and I see the trend starting to go down independent of this particular tool. And I think when we voted for it a year ago, I was in opposition of it, but I'm very respectful of the process that we've engaged in, and the fact that I know that we all want the same thing. It's just a matter of what we do often. I think as a board, we come together and we decide what's the best use of funds. So for me, I'm not convinced that this is a tool. I think if someone were to ask me what other tools I have a little bit more faith in, it would probably be the restorative approaches. I think that I am looking forward to see what that does. And it's really interesting because we voted for this, and there's a cost to it, and we're measuring impact. And so I think sometimes other tools we use have a different impact, but they can actually lead to similar outcomes. And I think that this would be one of them. So thankful that we brought it back. I'm not quite convinced that this is one of the many tools that I believe is a strong way to keep our classrooms safe and drug-free, but very respectful of the process we've engaged in. Dr. Buss?
I had one more follow-up point to make as well, is that I do recall that previous board members also had concerns about false positives and how that was dealt with, and wondered sort of if that's happened, and what has the response been, has there been any impacts up to this point in time. So that would be great information as well.
Okay.
Great.
Well, I can comment on that just kind of briefly here. I'm not aware of any false positives, in the sense that when the dog alerts but no substance was actually found, the student would still be interviewed, and in the situations that I'm recalling anyway, as reported by the organization, the students reported that they were around the substance at some point in time. So the dog actually did alert on something, but it was not necessarily in the possession of that student at the time.
But I think the question I would have interpreted would have been, by singling out the student and taking them out of class into the principal's office and having that discussion, has that created any uneasiness on the campus? I think that was the issue that was brought up a year ago. Is the
I did not
ostracizing
give
of
you
one
feedback
student.
that says that was the case.
Are we collecting that feedback, though?
Not in terms like documentation like you have in front of you, it's more or less in conversational type
With the
information.
student or with just the administrators?
With the administration.
Okay. Ms. Parker?
Just one final thought on my part, and that is, that is in terms of the cost. Because when we have students that are in school instead of suspended for 3 to 5 days, we are offsetting the loss in ADA. And, you know, of course, we can't say that this is exactly because of this or because of that, but I think it's important to keep in mind that when we keep the students on campus, that they get the instructional time that they need, and we don't lose the ADA, and so it's always a trade-off. That we need just to be aware, you know, if a program makes a difference and it keeps kids in school and on campus, then it makes a difference in terms of the offsetting the cost.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sumter.
You're welcome.
I'm presuming this is coming back
For
an action item?
Agenda item.
Yes, it will at the next
meeting.
board meeting.
Yes.
Probably not on the consent calendar.
Right. All right, moving on to a discussion of professional learning.
Thank you very much, Ms. President. I thought it would be a good idea to let the board know the work that our staff is engaged in since the last day of school in preparation for this year and the coming year. Coming years. On June 9th and 10th, as you're aware, we had over 85% of our teachers attending professional learning on how we will work to create Common Core instructional units using the PLC as kind of the vehicle for getting teachers to collaborate and work together. But since then, we've also, on June 12th through 14th, we had CERT, which is our Emergency Response Team Preparedness Training. We had on June 17th and 18th, we had La Cumbre Junior High School engaged in Restorative Approaches training. On June 19th and 20th, we had Goleta Valley Junior High School engaged in Restorative Approaches training. And then again on June 19th through the 21st, we had CERT training for secondary schools. On August 9th, we had inclusion training for administrators, elementary in the morning, secondary in the afternoon. This week, we have had project-based instruction for our elementary school teachers at Santa Barbara Junior High School. In addition to that, we have had this week facilitated IEP training and conflict resolution, where we had the majority of our elementary school principals and secondary administrators as well. Also this week, we had Restorative Approaches training with Santa Barbara High School and La Colina. Tomorrow and Thursday is our leadership charge, where all members of our leadership team will be engaged in looking at how we're going to move forward with implementing the Common Core. We have our new teacher orientation, which is on Monday, August 19th. It will be for all our new teachers. And August 20th, all certificated staff will be attending a professional learning conference at San Marcos High School, which some of you have let me know you're attending. I hope you all get a chance to go to. Looks like a great course of lots, as you heard earlier. And then on August 21st and 22nd, we'll have staff at school sites participating in site-specific professional learning. And then on August 26th, all of our kids show up, and so we're excited about that. It looks like we may have a few more than we did last year. Throughout the year, you'll hear from myself and Dr. Drotti and Mr. Handel about the training our certificated and classified staff will be engaged in. In particular, our certificated staff will be working in professional learning communities, implementing the Common Core, and continuing to work on creating technology learning environments in our classrooms. And we'll be working not just with our teachers in our PLCs, but also our district liaisons and our teachers on special assignment. We have 5 outstanding teachers who are working with our K through 12 teachers. And we will also have our technology coaches, who will continue to work with our teachers throughout our district. They did an incredible job this past year. We're excited about the work they're going to continue to do this year. So it's a lot of our teachers. You know, the Common Core is creating a lot of great opportunities for us to learn and continue to improve and really become a continuously improving organization. And we hope that we're providing our teachers and our administrators with the opportunities to engage in that professional learning, and I think, as you've heard, we are. We look forward to continuing to do that, so we'll report as we go along.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Cash. Board questions or comments?
Has the new structure been well received by the entire staff? And
The Common Core?
yeah, it changed from department heads to
Well, we haven't done it yet.
Oh, we haven't
so-
done it yet, okay. Well, they
So-
know about it, yeah.
Yes, obviously they know about it, and, you know, the thing that's really important about that is, from my perspective, the PLCs really is an opportunity for teacher leaders to emerge and really drive the implementation of the Common Core, because it's going to depend so much on them. Our promise to our teachers is that neither one of us know what it's going to really be like, and we promise to stay in communication about the issues as they arrive. We have promised that we will be as true as possible and as consistent as possible in the process, because what we want to make sure is that what teachers experience at one school is the same process that they would experience at another school. You know, how the teachers interact, the products they produce, a lot of that will be, you know, PLC dependent, site dependent, grade level dependent, but we'll certainly be reporting to you as it goes along, and we'll be meeting with our teachers to make sure that we're still on the same page, doing the right thing and moving together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. All right. Hearing no additional comments or questions, we will move on. First reading of Administrative Regulation 6146.11, alternative credits towards graduation.
So Dr. Dradi and I are going to tag team this. This is before you as a first reading. We wanted to formalize a process that's already in existence, and then also provide a little more regulation and structure in this process. And some of the changes you'll note are that we're going to clearly require that the school be WASC accredited, and that there's a required amount of time that students be at their home school in order to receive credit for concurrent enrollment in an outside accredited school. And then importantly, we want to identify separately that course completion on the student's transcript, and not just transfer over the courses onto our transcript. And so both Dr. Dradi and I are here to answer any questions that you may have regarding this, and hopefully we'll have answers.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Board questions or comments, Mr. Herron?
Have we had a lot of students doing this already, and has there been problems?
Yes, to both of those. Yes and yes.
And the problems being?
The most significant problem is that we haven't had a consistent or uniform application of what schools, outside schools, would be appropriate to accept the credit for. It's been, we didn't have something like the school must be WASC accredited, which we think is really important, because that is our own accrediting agency. And we also didn't have any formal information about, well, if a student wants to concurrently enroll, what's the minimum amount of time they need to stay in our system and take courses in order to remain a student in our district.
Thank you.
And I will add that Ms. Idelson and myself sit on the high school graduation requirement committee, that name, and this has actually been a hot topic in the last year and a half or so. So I think that, if I understand correctly, this recommendation is also taking into account a lot of the discussion that took place between teachers, administrators, parents, and community representatives about high school graduation requirements, but this was a hot topic.
And our goal would be, if there's no questions, would be to, this one we would want to move on to the consent agenda at the next board meeting.
Agreed.
All right, no questions, comments? I do have a clarifying question. Semester periods equate to what?
Semester.
So if it says 10 semester periods, that's
Let me look at it.
5 classes.
five classes
yes.
per semester.
Yes.
So if you look under supervised work experience education, it's just talking about units, and I have to sometimes think of units versus courses versus.
Yeah.
So I
But,
was
you know,
trying to get my math
And you bring
straight.
up something that I think eventually we have to address, because we have used units, courses, credits, sometimes interchangeably, and haven't been consistent in the application of what's a unit, what's a credit, what's a course, because they mean different things in different systems.
Yeah, we could definitely review that. Our purpose for this policy here was just to, the only additional component we added here were the ones in green. So, but we can look at that one.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
We'll move it to, this one we will move to consent.
All right. And we closed our conference agenda items with a discussion on Quetzal, a program of Alta Vista Alternative Junior High and High Schools.
At this time, I'd like to invite Fran Wagenegg, the principal of La Cuesta, who has put a lot of energy and preparation in developing the program and has intimate details that she would like to share.
Play with my technology for a moment here. All right, Quetzal. Why Quetzal? Go to the next one. I wanted to get to this question first, because this is actually the most common question that I've gotten over the last month and a half since we started playing with the name. Quetzal, the Quetzal, or the resplendent Quetzal, is a very important bird in Central American culture. It's the national bird of Guatemala, and it symbolizes freedom and liberty, to kind of take it all down. Both Alta Vista and La Cuesta have birds as their mascots. La Cuesta is the firebird, symbolizing rebirth. Alta Vista has the eagle, symbolizing all the things that the eagle stands for. And so we looked at the Quetzal and said, this is for one thing, it's a beautiful bird, but the Quetzal in mythology cannot be held in captivity or it dies. And so I liked the idea of the freedom and sticking with this whole idea of the bird theme. So we want our students to be able to really connect with our mascots. Because we don't have athletic teams, we want our students to connect with the mascots in a different sort of way. And I just felt like the Quetzal was a beautiful symbol for the students that we're going to be serving through this program. It's also a challenge for people to pronounce, so it's a good conversation piece. So let's talk about the students. Placement criteria. Who will be the students that we are serving in this program? There'll be students who primarily fall into 3 categories. Expulsion, students who have gone through the expulsion process and have been referred by yourselves to expulsion. There will also be students who are referred out of the SARB process. So we're talking about students who've gone through that 5-step process and still have significant truancy issues. And then finally, we're looking at providing somewhere for students who are transitioning out of Los Prietos Boys Camp, so that we can provide them with support and wraparound services so that they can be successful. If I can for just a moment, I'd like to talk about this third group. This is actually something that I've envisioned for a number of years, probably 4 or 5 years, and talked with a number of people collaboratively in the community about the need for this. So many times when I was an assistant principal at Santa Barbara High School, I would see students just show up one morning. They've been released from camp, and they were told, get into school right away by their probation officers, or they'd be in violation. And invariably, for most of them, within, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes shorter, they would re-violate, and part of that would and they would not be attending school, and they would not be successful. And I've always felt like we needed to have somewhere where we could transition students and have a place where they could be successful, and then ultimately make a transition either into La Cuesta, Alta Vista, or back to their traditional high school. So that's the idea with that third group. Let's go on to the next slide. The curriculum and instruction piece is also key here. We wanted to do something new, something that we're not doing anywhere else in the district. We want something where these students can be successful, but we also saw that we have students grades 7 through 12 who will be serving. So how do you serve the student who's in honors and GATE classes, who is an 8th grader, and a student who is a senior in high school and is deficient 100 credits and perhaps has a learning disability? So blended learning gives us the leeway to give students the individual program that they need. It also allows us to engage them in learning in a different way. So blended or hybrid learning will include online courses, face-to-face with the teacher, and my slide got messed up. It should be project-based learning, not online courses based. Project-based learning. And when I say project-based learning, we're looking at not projects in the way we traditionally think of projects that you do in school, but long-term, quarter-long projects that cover all the core subject areas. So for example, students, for the first quarter, students will pick an issue in our community that concerns them. They'll work together with a couple other students to research everything about that concern. They'll study the history of it, they'll study the physics and the other sciences of it, the biology of it, they'll study the math, and they'll also write. And so we're really looking at allowing students to cover all 4 core subject areas in this project-based learning. And then they'll ultimately culminate in writing a letter to local officials, perhaps yourselves, to present their concern. Where are the Quetzal? Where are the Quetzal programs? We have 4 sites. First is in Goleta at the CAC, Community Action Commission offices. We're right there in the office. And the thing that's great about this is they have welcomed our students. They're looking forward to having our students. You literally walk in, and the offices are all around there, and here's our classroom. And so they're going to be a part of that. And the great thing is Los Compadres and other programs that support our youth are right there. And so they'll be a part of the CAC community. We have our special education site at La Colina, where we've also relocated to Alta Vista. And so we will have 1 special education teacher, an aide, and no more than 15 students on that campus receiving special education services. On the east side, we will be located at La Casa de la Raza, and then on the west side, we'll be located at the West Side Neighborhood Center. And I want to say that these last two, not only do we have a classroom at these locations, but we already have a wealth of activities that the students can participate in as part of these organizations. Okay. So how are we supporting the students? We have a 1.0 FTE assistant principal. We have a new assistant principal. We have 3 full-time general education teachers, 1 full-time special education teacher, 1 full-time school psychologist, a Fighting Back YSS counselor, and a 0.5 clerical to support the program. The positions that are in bold are positions that are shared with La Cuesta and Alta Vista. The unbolded are specific just to Quetzal. And I want to note that after creating this presentation, we were able to actually determine that we didn't need the funding for the 0.5 custodial. We were able to, through our community collaborations, work out a way to provide custodial services at no cost to the district. So that's money in our pockets, right, that we can use in other ways. So, so that's the student support piece. And I do want to emphasize that I talked earlier about the collaboration that we see coming out of the Quetzal programs within our community. That's the most exciting part of what we're doing, is really this community piece. So already we have in line a media arts piece, a gardening piece at the West Side Community Center, the building of raised beds and creation of creation of gardens out there, mural projects at both Casa de la Raza and West Side, Partners in Education internships, culinary arts at the West Side program, and then our Sweet Start program, which I think you know about, which is our beekeeping internship that Dr. Paul Cronshaw started up last year at La Cuesta. So this is just the beginning, and the career technical is going to be a very important part of what we're doing. Before I take questions from you, I do want to emphasize, folks have asked me, why is this a part of Alta Vista and not La Cuesta? There are 2 reasons for this. First, Alta Vista has a junior high, we actually have a junior high school component of Alta Vista. We only had 1 student in it last year, but this allows us to serve students in grades 7 and 8. The other piece is that ultimately we see this as much of it taking on an independent study type of feel, that we're really independently looking at each student and giving them the exact programming that they need educationally. And finally, La Cuesta is a continuation high school. Students by law have to be 16 in order to attend, and primarily we just serve 11th and 12th graders. So Alta Vista, we were able to include a broader base of students there. Oh, questions?
Thank you. Board questions, comments, Ms. Parker?
So Quetzal is really sort of a subdivision or a program of Alta Vista?
Right.
Is that the way I should be thinking about it? Okay.
It is, it's a program of Alta Vista.
All right, thank you, that helps. I've got a couple of questions. When are you opening, August 26th?
August 26th, yes.
And how many students do you anticipate starting with?
I just looked today. We have, I'm going to count in my head right now, 17 right now, but we have appointments with another 7 or 8 students in the coming week. Ultimately, our goal is to have those schools running at 12 to 15 students each in order to meet ADA the ADA we need to not run in the red. And
Do you mean each classroom, essentially, or each site would have 12 to 15?
Each site, 12 to 15 students.
Okay. All right, well, I look forward to seeing the first project about whether or not it makes sense for us to have drug dogs. Thank you.
That's a good one, Ms. Parker. Thank you.
I noticed this is on the conference agenda, but I also noticed that it's well underway. So do we need to take any action maybe quicker than 2 weeks from now, or?
Well, I don't know that there's any need for you to take any action.
Oh, okay.
So, because it's just another program in our school, we're not creating another school or.
Okay, good, then answer that.
Well, I wanted to thank you because I think in March it was where we discovered that the situation was going to change for students who had been expelled in our district. And I think this is a perfect example of what happens when educators are faced with a serious challenge. We think outside the box, we get creative, and we create programs like this. And the buzz I'm hearing in the community is a positive one. I've already had a faculty member say, oh my goodness, can I be a guest lecturer? I'll lecture on what gets that means. I mean, and so I think it's there's some good energy around this and thinking about how we can best serve our students, and also thinking of ways that maybe we've been successful and not so successful in serving our students. And I know that you've taken the leadership in charge, so a very special thanks goes to you.
Thank you.
Yes. I can only imagine what it's like to be in your first official year as a principal and get the news that you are now going to have 4 sub-programs. And so that is very difficult work, but I do think it's symbolic of what educators do to really serve our students in the best interest. I am really excited personally about what's going to happen, about the ideas. I can't wait for letters or suggestions to come forward to us. Even thinking about policy or programs, I think it really empowers students who have been, I think, marginalized for sometimes poor choices, but that's probably more of a cause of a human condition than anything else. We all make poor choices at times, but I really believe in the second chance. So thank you to you. Thank you, Dr. Cash. And I know it's been a team effort, so there's lots of folks who have been involved, so thank you all.
Thank you.
Dr. Buss.
Likewise, I'd like to thank you for all the work, and especially because you partnered with people in the community to do this. And I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. I mean, that's the kind of work we should be doing all the time, is that thinking outside of the box. Who can I work with? How can I do this? And so for everyone who got involved in it, thank you.
I'd like to personally acknowledge Fran publicly for her work here. You said what I was going to say, and that is, no, I'm glad you said it, and that is to have her first full year as a principal and then be told, well, hey, you're not only getting what you signed up for, but you're getting a whole lot more. And when I talked to Fran about it originally, her eyes lit up. She was literally ecstatic about the opportunity to be creative and think outside the box, and particularly about students that she cares deeply and passionate about. And I think we all know that up here, her concern and her care for students who have been marginalized by our system. So I'm excited. I can't wait, sometime during the year, Fran will report back to you and let you know how things are going. And I'm sure there'll be trials and tribulations, but what I will count on, and I know that we'll all see, will be her great positive attitude and her willingness to do whatever it takes. So, Fran, thank you very much for what you've done for our community.
I appreciate it. And if I can I know we're at the end of the agenda, but I'd like to say that I appreciate what you all have to say. I feel like we're doing this all together as a team, and my email and phone is literally blowing up with folks from the community who want in on this. And so I think we have a real opportunity to do something we haven't done before, and it's really great that the students who are getting to experience this type of learning for the first time are students who have been marginalized and haven't had success. So I look forward to reporting back. I think it'll be good. Thank you.
Thank you. And this concludes our agenda items for the day. We've already talked about coming events, a lot of professional development in the next 2 weeks. I know you'll probably see all of us at different points, getting good information for ourselves. But also future agenda items. Board, any items you'd like to see come forward? All right, hearing none, I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
John didn't take over, things changed.